So I'm going to talk about the kids that I interviewed for this project. I actually interviewed 4 kids, Dylan, Ashley, Gabby, and Gracie. Dylan is 9 and Ashley is also 9, and then Gabby and Gracie are twin girls who are 7. Dylan and Gabby and Gracie are siblings, and Ashley is their cousin. Also, Dylan, Gabby, and Gracie's mother is a high school English teacher. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was I asked them if they were a good reader, and all of them said yes, but they said yes for a couple different reasons. Dylan said, well, it's because I'm usually reading. My sisters are usually on their phones, and I'm the one that's usually reading, so that makes me a good reader. Ashley said it's because she doesn't skip pages or read too fast. Gabby says she can picture things in her head. And Gracie says it's because she reads chapter books in a couple days. What I thought about this was that there seems to be a disconnect between what makes someone a good reader and what makes someone an efficient reader. And I don't think our students really understand what makes them a good reader. It's not how many pages you read. It's not how many chapter books you read, but it's making those connections and being able to visualize. And so I'm kind of concerned that that was something that they didn't necessarily understand. So the next thing I asked them was, what makes a good reader? And Dylan's response was, don't read too fast. And then Ashley, Gabby, and Gracie all said to practice. So it is important, obviously, to practice your reading, but I'm not sure that they're practicing the right skills to make them a good reader. It's interesting that Dylan said, don't read too fast, partly because he was sitting there reading while I was asking him questions, which I thought was really funny. Obviously, we can practice their reading through using short stories and graphic novels, just to kind of practice their visual literacy as well. Then I asked them, who's the best reader that you know? And everyone, including Dylan himself, said that he was the best reader. And everyone except Dylan said that it was because he reads fast. So again, there's that disconnect of where we had Dylan saying, well, you're a good reader if you don't read too fast. And then you have the 3 girls saying, well, he's a good reader because he reads fast. So again, I find that really kind of alarming because it kind of implies that if you don't read quickly, you're not a good reader. I know in school we focus on fluency and we do the running reading tests, but I think, again, we need to bring up that conversation of just because you're not a fast reader doesn't mean that you're a good reader. And again, we can use those short stories and graphic novels to show that they're good readers, that they can identify literary elements in different formats. So again, that was kind of concerning to me because you have them saying that Dylan's a good reader, but does he make connections? Can he point out literary elements? You know, it's not just about speed. All right, so next up, I asked them, first, how often do you read? And Dylan said every day. Ashley said twice a week, depending on what she was doing. And Gabby and Gracie honestly said the same thing. They have a to-do list, and it says to read 20 minutes per day on this to-do list. So their next answer to this question of why do people read really kind of illustrates that. Dylan said to have fun. He is constantly reading. He enjoys reading. He does it for fun. He doesn't need a to-do list to tell him to do it. And the other 2 out of the 3 girls do have a to-do list. And they said that you read to get knowledge for school. So there's that connection they're making between, well, I have to read because I'm going to get information and then I'm going to be smart in school. So it seems to me that they're not connecting with, you know, reading can be fun. And that might be because the books that are being used in school aren't interesting to them, and it's something that we need to utilize, and we've talked about it multiple times within the class, that we need to tap into our students' interests. And I think that if we do that, maybe they can move past, well, I'm reading to get information, to I'm reading because I want to read and because I want to experience all of these things that maybe I can't do in my life. So I asked them, do they reread books? And all of them said yes. Most of them said it's because the books are really interesting. And these books that they had reread, they had chosen by themselves. So again, tapping into that interest factor. We need to bring that into the classroom, obviously. Some of the books that the kids reread, Dylan reread a Pokemon book. You could bring that into classrooms now just with the whole Pokemon Go thing, and relate it to different medias, obviously. I had Ashley who's rereading a mystery, and then the girls were reading books that were to their interests. One of them was rereading a book about animals, and the other one was reading the Gossip Girls from the bathroom. So again, tapping into that interest, I think, is one of the most prevalent themes that I discovered as I was doing the interviews, plus just throughout our classroom discussions. So what books do you like to read? Everyone, which surprised me, chose adventure books. And I wanted to just read from my textbook that it says, many adolescents, especially reluctant readers who do not usually pick up a book unless it is part of a school assignment, willingly read books about such adventure and survival experiences. And this made me think of Gabby and Gracie, the two girls who have a to-do list, but they read adventure books. So it shows that their attention can be held using this type of literature, and that we can definitely bring that into the classroom. The other thing that was talked about was Ashley, and Ashley is the 9-year-old, and she likes reading mystery books. And again, our textbook pointed out that a good mystery encourages reasoning and problem solving, as well as questioning and examining evidence, facts, and motives. Again, it's a great way that she's honing those skills through mystery. The book she reread was The Mystery Library. So she really likes kind of pulling out pieces of information and putting together almost like a puzzle. So definitely using those skills in the classroom, and we can connect mystery books to analyzing literature and eventually getting into a more traditional literature that you could use that for. Okay, movies. These kiddos like movies, that's for sure. Most of them watch movies a couple times a month. There was some discrepancy between the siblings. I'm not sure if that's just because they couldn't remember, or if, you know, one of them was sitting in the room and the other two were not watching the movie. But they are interested in movies. The girls really enjoy horror movies. This actually surprised me, partly because I am terrified of these movies. But we can definitely bring that into the classroom as well. In one of our chapters, we discussed using horror books. Again, it's something that I'm kind of apprehensive about, so I really have to step outside of my comfort zone with that. But it says, by confronting imaginary fears, they are confronting their own anxieties in a safe place while learning to accept their responsibilities associated with becoming adults. That is obviously important, but horror movies scare me. So I was really surprised that they said that. Dylan likes to watch action films. Again, that kind of relates to the books that he likes to read. He likes to read fantasy. His last book that he actually read was Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, and that was the week that I interviewed him, and we talked about me seeing the movie, and he was going to see it once he read the book, or once he had finished the book. So action movies, and then Gracie actually likes comedy movies, which was odd to me, doing comedy and horror at the same time. But these genre of movies can definitely relate to the genres of adolescent literature that we've been talking about, and these particular genres are really out of my comfort zone. So as I've been going through this class, you know, I've really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I have to jump out of my comfort zone. My students come into school every day and they are out of their comfort zone, so the least I can do is bring in literature that they can relate to and that they can enjoy. I just wanted to reiterate that with a quote from the article about remixing and understanding literacy instruction, and it says, students enter our classrooms with a wealth of knowledge and a lot to offer, and we hope to tap this for instruction. And that's really important. We definitely need to do that. I know that as a teacher, I am constantly struggling to find something that holds my students' attention, and this definitely gives me an idea of how I can do that. You know, even bringing the movies itself into the classroom, obviously not horror movies that are extremely violent, but you know, comedy movies, and comparing comedy movies with comedy books and all of those other things. So that was something that I really liked about asking them about movies. I also talked to them about if they've seen books as movies. All of them have seen the Hunger Games movies. They said that if they had had the books, they would have read the books and seen the movies. This book was obviously a little bit too old for them, so they couldn't have done that, but they definitely said that they would have if they had access to the book. What do you like to read? This also surprised me. Everyone had checked the boxes for novels and comic books, and I was really excited about the comic books things. This past week was our graphic novels, and to me, it kind of reiterates that this generation is a more visual generation, and that they need to work on their visual literacy. And we've talked a lot about how they can use pictures to determine the setting or the mood and see how it relates to the wording. So I thought that was really awesome that they had picked that. Gabby and Gracie had also picked short stories as one of their things that they like to read. Again, we can incorporate that into the classroom. They are short, so we can still pick out literary elements without having a long, complicated plot. It was interesting to me that no one picked out newspapers, although I'm not super surprised by that. It seems to be a literature form that's kind of fading out, partly I think because there aren't a lot of images that they can relate to. The type is always really close together. They tend to be lengthy. I just don't think that they hold the interest for those kids anymore. So my thoughts. I thought it was really interesting that I got to interview these kids, and it kind of applies to what we've been talking about to the real world. I really enjoyed their thoughts on, you know, what makes them a good reader, although I am kind of concerned that it seems to be focused on speed and not comprehension. Again, I was really excited about them choosing comics, and I thought it was interesting because in the article by Michael Pagliaro, he said, adapting the language arts classroom for 21st century digital natives is crucial because of the nature of contemporary texts, which increasingly combine modes and media, making definitions of literary based on verbal language alone increasingly inadequate. This kind of proves that as teachers we need to shift our instruction to meet the needs of these adolescents that are coming through. I've really enjoyed the class. I've learned so much about myself. I've discovered genres that I would never have picked up. Bone Gap was one of those books that I would never have picked up. I definitely can see myself bringing in graphic novels to my reading classroom. I know we have them in the library, but I'm not sure how much those are actually used. I think that, you know, kids want to read, but they don't necessarily have the skills to tell us what they want to read. And so as our job as teachers, we need to make sure that we are bringing in all of these wonderful pieces of literature to them so that they can, you know, become lifelong readers. They can enjoy reading, and they're not just reading to learn something, but to actually experience it and immerse themselves in these worlds that they wouldn't necessarily have access to. So I thank you so much, because I've loved this course completely, and I would totally take it again if I could. And I just wanted to point out that I also have the Works Cited page as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.